Something very telling is happening inside the Pittsburgh Steelers organization right now, and if you really pay attention to how this roster is being built heading into the 2026 NFL Draft, you start to understand that this is not just a minor adjustment, and this is a defining decision that could shape the entire offense this season, because when you look at the current wide receiver room, there's something missing. Yes, on the surface, it might look solid. You've got DK Metcalf bringing that explosive vertical presence and physical dominance after the catch, and Michael Pittman Jr. serving as that reliable chain mover, the guy who works the short and intermediate areas and makes tough contested catches. That duo is real. That duo works. But if you go one layer deeper, the issue becomes very clear. This room is incomplete, and this is where things start to get serious. Right now, the Steelers do not have a true dependable wide receiver 3. Roman Wilson is still more of a projection than a proven option. There's potential there, no doubt, but relying on him again the same way they did before would be repeating a mistake that already cost them. Last season made that obvious when the team had to bring in veterans mid-year just to stabilize the position. That's not something you want to go through again if you're trying to compete at a high level. And then when you look at the rest of the depth chart, you see role players, not difference makers. Players who can contribute in specific situations, on special teams, or as blockers, but not guys you trust to consistently win matchups against NFL defenses. Now, here's where the situation becomes even more critical. Mike McCarthy's system thrives on 3 wide receiver sets. That's not optional, that's foundational. If you don't have a legitimate third receiver who can step in and produce at a high level, the entire structure of the offense becomes limited. And when you combine that with a quarterback like Aaron Rodgers, who is expected to be leading this offense, you begin to understand the urgency, because Rodgers is not the type of quarterback who is going to bail you out with mobility anymore. He wins with his mind, his precision, and his ability to read defenses. But for that to work at the highest level, he needs receivers who can create separation, especially against man coverage. And that's exactly where the Steelers are lacking right now. DK Metcalf, as dominant as he is, wins more with speed and power than with elite route separation. Michael Pittman Jr. is tough and reliable, but he's not someone who consistently creates explosive separation downfield. So what happens? Defenses notice that, they adjust. They lean into man coverage because they're not afraid of getting beaten consistently off the line, and we already saw how that plays out. Last season, the Steelers were one of the teams that faced the most man coverage in the league. That's not random. That's a direct reflection of how opposing defenses viewed their receiving threats. And if nothing changes, there's no reason to believe that trend won't continue. Now imagine that scenario repeating itself in 2026. You've got Aaron Rodgers, one of the smartest quarterbacks in NFL history, someone who thrives at dissecting zone defenses, being forced once again to deal with tight man coverage, without receivers who can consistently win those one-on-one battles. That limits everything. It limits the playbook, it limits the explosiveness, and ultimately, it limits how far this offense can go. That's why this decision is so important. The Steelers don't just need another receiver, they need a very specific type of receiver. They need someone who can step in and immediately function as a true man-to-man separator. A player with a complete route tree, someone who can create space, someone who brings speed, quickness, and technical precision. A receiver who can force defenses to rethink how they line up against Pittsburgh. Because once you force defenses out of man coverage and into zone, that's when Aaron Rodgers becomes truly dangerous. That's when his football IQ takes over. That's when he starts picking defenses apart. But here's the challenge, and this is where the pressure really builds. Finding that kind of receiver is not easy. Finding someone who can do all of that and do it right away as a rookie is even harder. And when you factor in the reality that Aaron Rodgers historically demands a high level of precision and chemistry from his receivers, the margin for error becomes extremely small. This isn't just about drafting talent. This is about drafting the right talent. Because if the Steelers miss on this decision, if they fail to bring in that missing piece, then everything we're talking about becomes a real concern again. The offense risks becoming predictable. The passing game risks being limited. And a season with high expectations could quickly turn into frustration. But if they get it right, if they find that one receiver who completes this trio, then suddenly everything changes. So now it comes down to this moment, this decision, this opportunity in the draft. And the question that every Steelers fan should be asking right now is simple. How important do you think it is for Pittsburgh to find that true wide receiver 3 before the season starts? And this is exactly where things start to get even more interesting, because now we're not just talking about a problem anymore. We're talking about about the possible solutions that could completely transform this offense. When you look at the upcoming draft class, there are several wide receivers who fit what the Steelers desperately need, but not all of them bring the same level of readiness, and that's the key detail here. This isn't just about potential, this is about immediate impact. Whoever steps into this role will be expected to contribute from day one, and more importantly, to earn Aaron Rodgers' trust as quickly as possible. One of the names that stands out right away is My Lemon. This is the type of receiver that, from a technical standpoint, checks a lot of boxes. His ability to separate, especially against man coverage, is exactly what Pittsburgh is missing right now. He runs routes with precision, understands timing, and knows how to create space at all levels of the field. There's a level of polish to his game that you don't always see in young receivers. And when you think about what Rodgers values in a target, discipline, route detail, and reliability, My Lemon starts to make a lot of sense as a potential fit. The only concern that has been floating around is how he presented himself during the pre-draft process, but strictly on the field, this is a player who could step in and immediately elevate the passing game. Then you have Jordan Tyson, and this is where things get really intriguing. Because when you turn on the film, there are flashes that remind you of elite level receivers. The fluidity, the body control, the way he moves in and out of breaks. It's all there. There's a natural feel to his game that you just can't teach. And there's also a connection worth paying attention to. Mike McCarthy has a history of valuing receivers with this type of profile. The comparison to CeeDee Lamb isn't random when you look at how Tyson plays. But of course, there's risk involved here. Injuries have been part of his story, and that could affect where he lands in the draft. For the Steelers, this becomes a question of risk versus reward. Do you bet on the upside, knowing that if he stays healthy, he could become a game-changing piece in your offense? Now, if you're looking for balance, someone who brings a little bit of everything without as many concerns, then Omar Cooper Jr. enters the conversation in a big way. This is a receiver who does a lot of things well. He's effective after the catch, he has the speed to stretch the field, and most importantly, he can separate consistently. There's a level of completeness to his game that makes him very appealing, especially for a team that doesn't want to miss on this pick. He might not have the same flash as some of the other names, but sometimes the safer, more well-rounded option is exactly what you need, especially when the goal is to plug someone directly into a starting role. And the list doesn't stop there. There are other receivers in this class who could bring that missing element, players with explosiveness, route running ability, and the kind of juice that this offense clearly needs. Some might be available later in the draft, others might require the Steelers to be aggressive and move up, but that's part of the strategy now. With multiple picks available, Pittsburgh has the flexibility to attack this position more than once. And honestly, they probably should, because let's be real about something. This isn't just about finding one player. The depth at wide receiver needs to be rebuilt. Bringing in competition, bringing in young talent, creating options, all of that matters if you want to avoid being in the same situation again halfway through the season. But there's also another path, and it's one that can't be ignored. What if the Steelers decide they don't want to rely entirely on a rookie? There are still veteran receivers available, proven players, guys who already understand how to get open, how to read defenses, how to adjust on the fly, things that Aaron Rodgers demands from his targets. And if Pittsburgh wants to maximize this window right now, bringing in a veteran to complete the trio could be the safer move. Imagine adding a receiver with elite speed to this group, someone who forces defenses to back off immediately, or a polished route runner who can consistently win in man coverage and give Rodgers that security blanket on critical downs. That changes the equation instantly. It reduces the risk that comes with developing a rookie, and it gives the offense a more stable foundation from the start. At the same time, trades are also on the table. We've seen names being mentioned, situations around the league that could create opportunities, and if the Steelers believe they are just one piece away offensively, making a move like that wouldn't be surprising at all. So now everything comes together. The need is clear. The options are there. The stakes are high. This is one of those decisions that can define a season before it even begins. If the Steelers find the right wide receiver to complete this group, they unlock the full potential of their offense. They give Aaron Rodgers the tools he needs to operate at a high level. They force defenses to adjust. And suddenly, this becomes a unit that can truly compete. But if they get it wrong, if they settle, or miss, or fail to address the issue properly, then all the same problems resurface, and the ceiling of this team stays limited. So now I want to hear from you. If you were in charge right now, would you go all in on drafting that wide receiver of the future, or would you bring in a proven veteran to make sure this offense is ready to win immediately? And if you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure to subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and check out the next video on your screen right now for more in-depth Steelers coverage. Because the more you think about it, the more this entire situation starts to feel like a defining crossroads for the Steelers front office, and especially for Omar Khan and Mike McCarthy. This isn't just another offseason move, this is about identity. Are the Steelers building for long-term stability at the position, or are they pushing aggressively to maximize what could be a very specific window with Aaron Rodgers leading this offense? And that question matters because the timeline changes everything. If the focus is on the future, then drafting a receiver like My Lemon, Jordan Tyson, or Omar Cooper Jr. becomes the priority. You invest in talent, you accept the growing pains, and you trust that by mid-season or later, you'll have a player who can truly elevate the offense. But if the focus is on winning right now, then patience becomes a luxury you might not have. Rodgers is not a developmental quarterback. He expects precision, chemistry, and execution immediately, and history has shown us something very important about that dynamic. Young receivers don't always click right away with Aaron Rodgers. The margin for error is small. Routes need to be exact. Timing needs to be perfect. Adjustments need to happen in real time. And if a receiver isn't on the same page, the ball simply doesn't go their way. That's not speculation. That's how Rodgers has always operated. So now imagine being a rookie stepping into that environment, expected not only to learn an NFL playbook, but also to earn the trust of one of the most demanding quarterbacks in the game, all while filling a role that is absolutely critical to the success of the offense. That's a lot to ask, and that's why this decision becomes even more layered than it seems on the surface. Because even if the Steelers draft the right player, there's still a transition period. There's still an adjustment phase, and if that takes too long, it could directly impact how this offense performs early in the season. On the other hand, if they go the veteran route, you're likely getting someone who already understands how to operate at the NFL level. Someone who can step in immediately, line up, and execute without needing months to develop that chemistry. That kind of move could stabilize the offense right away and allow Rodgers to play at a higher level from the very beginning of the season. But of course, that path isn't perfect either. Veteran players come with their own risks. Age, injuries, contract situations, off-field concerns in some cases, and the reality that you might be investing in a short-term solution instead of building something sustainable. So again, it comes back to that central question. What matters more right now? Immediate production or long-term growth? And here's where things get really interesting. There's a very real possibility that the Steelers don't choose just one path. With the number of draft picks they currently have, Pittsburgh is in a position to be aggressive. They can draft multiple receivers, bringing in competition and depth, while also exploring the veteran market to secure a more reliable option for the present. That combination could give them the best of both worlds, immediate stability and future upside. And honestly, based on everything we're seeing, that might